Hey, what's up guys? Nathan here. Today I want to show you how I put together percussion. I actually have a specific strategy that I follow if I don't really know what to do. This is what I do, and it tends to work for me. And as a matter of fact, the way I discovered it was I noticed that I'd put together some pretty rad percussion rather effortlessly, and it just so happened this was the kind of strategy that I was following, because we all have, patterns that we follow when it comes to our creativity. And if you can catch one, I would write it down. I like to keep a journal next to me where I do that. So I have it written down here, and I'm actually going to run through the steps before we dive in. And it's my perk maker strategy. I don't really have like a fancy pants name for it yet, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, so step one is you want to put together your chords. Obviously, if you don't have chords yet, I would suggest you make them. I just put together some pretty simple all white note chords here. At this stage, when you've made your chords, you can make what are called rhythm chords, which are chords that have a rhythm. So, I actually have an idea for a rhythm I'd like. But before we can actually make our rhythm chord, I would suggest that you make a pattern with your snare. Oh, right. Getting ahead of myself here. Getting excited. Really excited. All right. So our perk strategy is step one is figure out your chords. Just do some standard chord pattern that switches every bar or every 2 bars, and you're fine. Step two is you want to create your kick snare pattern. Now, whether you have a kick, a 4 to the floor beat, which is, kick every quarter note, which means that your snare is on every downbeat, which is your second and fourth beat, which I think I may have named that wrong, but you have your snare and on the second and fourth notes. We're going to be doing a break beat pattern, which is essentially a snare on the second beat, and then before the snare hits again on the next beat, you have another kick before it. This is like really standard. So we're going to do that so we get a pattern going, and that's step two. Step three is you're going to create a simple single hat rhythm. Step four is that you're going to then amplify some small part of that simple hat rhythm that you made. You're going to add a ghost note to it, which is typically like a shaker hat or just some other hat that's going to be very subtly, or perhaps even obviously, just triggering off or right after a specific hat note, which I'll show you how that works. And then the last step is you are going to add in pitched percussion, which is a percussion that pitches up and down. It like changes. And as a matter of fact, the structure with with your percussion is the same as making melodies. It's A B A C, or at least it should be. It doesn't have to be. You can do whatever you want there, but we're gonna have A B A C. Where your C is actually technically a B, C, because it's very similar to your B. And we're going to color code these just so we can keep track. And then we'll have that be red. So, because orange goes to red, right? Anyway, so starting with our chords, or we've got a rhythm now, we're just going to play it, and then we'll see if we can't develop rhythm chords. If not, we'll move on to the hi-hats programming. Cool. So let's say we didn't want to, create a percussion rhythm just yet. We wanted to do our rhythm chords, as I said. You just come in here and, you're like, okay, I want this to happen over here. And then maybe like, your standard prog chord. Pretty standard jolly beat going on here. Nothing terribly special. And then you just kind of are going to repeat that again. And, for demonstration purposes, I'm doing something very simple. But, when it comes to making a song, people like really simple things. So, there's no reason to overcomplicate it. And you'll hear me say that a lot just because that's something I struggled with in the past, was just overcomplicating things, making it way more difficult than I could wrap my head around just quite yet. So we got our chord rhythm now, and we're going to listen to it. And already I can hear something happening in the drums. So I'm actually going to do, I'm going to alter that. What I like to do is just, typically I actually like to work, when I'm putting my drums together, I actually like to do it this way, where I just cut this little drum sample really short, and then I have it, and I can move it around, I can duplicate it out. And so we've got that rhythm, since I'm still putting everything together. And then at this stage, I think I heard something over here. Often when I'm working with drums, I tend to work in 164, a 164 grid or a 132 grid. You don't need 164. 132 is really typically where I sit. Okay, so when it comes to putting your percussion together, you know, when I'm putting my drum and snare together, I work in a 2-bar rhythm. And now that we're done with that, we're going to actually merge these all together into one region. Since the second bar is different than the first bar, I'm actually going to color it differently so I know what it is, and then duplicate shared, which is like my favorite feature. It's actually why I switched to this DAW, is because any changes I make to this purple zone over here are automatically reflected over there. It's a great feature. Most DAWs have it, so I apologize if yours doesn't, though. Pro Tools, I think, doesn't have it, but Pro Tools is great in other ways, substantially great if you're working with audio only. Anyway, so now we've got our drum rhythm, and we're actually going to go down to our simple hi-hat rhythm. When I first program my hi-hats, I generally follow the rule that it's a lot easier to make a really great sounding single bar hi-hat rhythm than it is to, you know, try to just flesh it all out in 2 bars first. If it doesn't sound good in 1 bar, good luck with 2 bars, though it could give you, you know, a different perspective. So, you know, that's just a general rule I follow because it's simpler to do it in 1 bar and then expand outwards to 2. So we're just going to pick a simple hat. If the first sample sounds great, don't feel obligated to go to the next one. This one just works. I'm going to do a standard kind of offbeat. We're going to keep that simple. We're not going to overcomplicate it. I sort of really want to do a reverse hat there, but for demonstration purposes, we're going to keep it simple. So it's just a standard kind of offbeat hat playing wherever you see it. All right, so it sounds pretty good there. Let's continue moving on. So this is our simple hat. Now, because it's not playing all the time, I'm actually going to start layering another hat in. And let's play it, and we'll do that. Okay, so this hat that I'm doing right now would actually qualify as my basic kind of, my first version of a hi-hat rhythm. I'm just going to use this hat wherever I want to create just like a kind of rhythmic flourish. Just something interesting that you wouldn't expect. And then we'll see about duplicating it out. When I do this, I actually like to, well, we're not there yet. So we're just going to play with it and we'll lay it out. So it's like, dooch, dun, dun, ch. That just sounds obvious to me. And so this is going to qualify as like a ghost note. So when I'm doing a ghost note, it's really subtle. I want you to barely hear it. And this is taking from some... I remember I watched a tutorial by Singularity, who's a great producer. And he said that, you know, if the quieter your hi-hat, the shorter it should be, because that's the way, you know, the shorter the tail of it should be. Because on a real drum set, because he was a real drummer, you know, the harder you hit the hat, the longer it takes for the tail to fade out because of all the energy and, you know, Newton or whatever. So the lighter you hit it, the faster it tapers out as well. Kind of like the faster you spin a dreidel and so forth. So we're going to leave that in there just so it's super subtle, because there's actually going to be a percussion that does that. But what this is doing for us is subconsciously the person's like listening to the song and they're being introduced to this kind of note that hits subconsciously right over here that you can't see anymore, but there it is. They're hearing it subconsciously. So when it comes around to like your B section, you might actually have percussion come in. So in our A section, it's like they hear it, and then in the B section, they finally hear something that amplifies it and kind of makes the person feel complete, because they've had an inkling the whole time. So you've given them like a breadcrumb trail. And it's people like breadcrumb trails when they're listening to your songs. If they don't, they just get lost, and then they feel lost in your song, and they're like, this is a terrible song. And you're like, no, it's intelligent dance music. It's too smart for you to understand. And they're like, no, you just don't know what you're doing. That was a discussion I had with somebody one time. Anyway, so yeah, so we're giving them a clue here, and we're probably going to do something funky over there. And let's listen to it now. So it's going to sound super cheesy at this stage, because it's just like it's pretty cheesy. We're actually going to stylize it with another hat later as well. And when I work with my hi-hats, I work in a modular, separated way where I like to have many different hats coming together to create a shuffle rather than the shuffle happening all on one track. So we're going to do the thing I said about percussion, because if I said it, it's probably a good idea. So like funky percussion always gives you like cool ideas. Cool. And then like I already want to pitch it because I feel like that'd be a good idea. Let me use this one. And just do that. Well, that doesn't work. So what we're going to do is, the actual way I do it is we have to do some kind of transient detection here. There we go. That was not very good transient detection. I thought I could adjust the threshold. Well, probably because I reversed the samples, it's freaking out, which kind of makes sense. So I have to do these by hand. Let's do them really quick. Did I not? Nope. Can I do it down here? I've always been curious about that. I feel like you can. Yes, you can. Ah, I love that. Ah, I keep pressing the wrong buttons. A little interruption here in our flow. And then, yeah, I think I got the rest. All right, cool. So using that, which I think should be settled, now I can split the audio at the bend markers. What was that? What was that shortcut? I don't remember that. Control-Shift-B. Cool. All right, so it's actually better to do it by hand, to have each individual one. Sometimes pitching it down with a pitch shifter doesn't work so well, especially when it's really fast like this. You got to cut the samples up and do it by hand. So that one starts at 0. This one goes to like 2 and then 4 and 6. I'm going by 2, 8, 10, 12, and 14. And then we'll just do 16. And we'll listen to that. So whatever time stretching algorithm you use determines the sound. There isn't ever a right algorithm to use, no matter what DAW you're in. Just use the one that sounds best. And generally you can switch between them. I know that you can do that in Ableton. And Ableton has some supposedly revered time stretching algorithms, which I can agree with. I mean, it has what's called the Z-plane, which is called Elastic. Or actually, Z-plane Elastic is all of them here, I guess. It uses them, which is a company that makes it. Anyway, so we're going to listen to our percussion now, and then we'll keep going. All right, cool. So problem number 1 that we've encountered is we have this cool little thing happen over here, but despite the fact that we have a ghost note over here telling us it's coming in, we're still kind of surprised when it just appears out of nowhere. So we're just going to duplicate it over here. And we're going to just change it a little bit. My guess is, I don't really have a guess, but we'll see. We'll just play it and tweak it. And then because something cool happens over here, why not do something, ridiculous? When I go about percussion, I just think in terms of like, what would be ridiculous to do? And then it might get a little more common later on. We'll reverse that. And we'll do that. And then, like, this is the pitch percussion part I'm talking about, where I just really let myself have fun with this. So this comes in like that. I could pitch it down, like 6 dB or 6 semitones. And then we might get something like this. All right, cool. We're going to leave that as is. And now we're going to kind of get everything attached to each other And if you've seen some of my finish a song sessions, which are where I show you just me working on tracks from somewhere in the arrangement process or sometimes the beginning, you'll see me do this. I keep everything color coded. I know most people do. It's nice to keep everything organized. Otherwise, you just get lost and you're like, where did I keep that? And that's no fun. So, all right, so everything's nice and green. I always have my basic percussion colored bright green, and then my more elaborate percussion will be like teal. My chords are always blue. All right, so let's have a listen through, and now we're going to listen to the whole chord progression. Cool, so that initial choice I made over here where I pitched that down was actually too early. And then we'll try that. So it's really subtle. You can hear it, but barely. But there's something happening there. So because this like suddenly comes in over here, you almost want to know that it came in, so you kind of signify it with a pattern that plays off of it. And this is why I keep my percussion modular and not all on the same track, because it helps me to better manage that. I prefer working with samples as opposed to MIDI when it comes to percussion. And so that pitch is too high. It's gonna be so cheese. Okay, all right. And we'll just shave some of that top end off. You'll notice like when I shave the top ends off things, I frequently switch between using this one, using the drop, and then using a regular EQ. And while, some of them offer different benefits than the others, I don't really care because I'll find out pretty quick whether I like it or not. So I'm not going to waste time deciding what I want. I'll just go with the first one that pops in my mind. And then if that doesn't work, I'll try another filter. And we know that comes in over here. The lighter notes are ones that are muted. And then we just have that pitched again. This is that pitched percussion part I'm talking about. So this part right here that we're working on is actually going to operate as our sort of kind of letting us know that we're in the C section of our rhythm. So when it comes in the first time, I'm actually going to have it only hit once. Cool. So we've got like some wacky stuff happening with our percussion. It's all bubbly. Oh my god. It's usually how it is. And then I'll come in later and I'll be like, this can be refined, made a little simpler, and then I'll just start subtracting stuff I don't need. So now we're going to add in a short kind of like faster hat. Sometimes you don't actually hear sounds in your head. Like when I'm out of practice, I often won't even hear the next thing that should come out in my head. I just do something, because you only get ideas if you've been listening to like lots of music and doing it. Otherwise, you just kind of go in blind. Something comes out of that as well. All right, so we're going to pick a hat. So for this, since it's going to be like a very shaker-esque rhythm, what I like to do is I like to create a kind of event for it, and then just make it half a bar in length, duplicate it out, because if it doesn't sound good in half a bar, then, you know, that's a problem. So I'm just going to do that, and then we're just going to play it. Cool, and then we're going to, you know, add like a shuffle in here somewhere. So now we merge them together so they're one bar long. Duplicate it out again. And we're just going to add a shuffle in here. Since it's a shuffle, I got to do a few things first. It's down here. So now we have, this is our A section. This is going to be our B section. So we have to remove the kind of linking that they have together, which is these little, these Pac-Man ghosts. And then I like to color it differently. And then we'll just duplicate that out. So the colors are connected, respectively, whatever that means. But if you've been with me since the beginning, you know what I mean. All right, so we're going to play it. So I'm actually going to mute that. And then, yeah, like I'm at the part where I have a lot of different rhythms going on. I liked how this kind of became dominant in driving kind of that feel that we're after. And, I mean, this is literally like at this point, I would just start putting the rest of my track together. This would be enough for me, because the rest of the kind of percussion choices I would make would be based off of how the other elements are playing together, how my bass plays, and whatnot like that. So that's pretty much how I put percussion together. Like I said, you know, I start with chords, as we did. Then I move on to kick and snare. as we did. Then I add like a simple hi-hat rhythm. Keeping it really simple, like on the offbeats, is just like, that's like a general principle. Then from there, the next step is to add something a little bit more kind of elaborate in that it plays on a different beat. Though sometimes if you just have like hats that are going every offbeat, you might take a separate hat and have it amplify one of those hats to give it kind of like a, it's happening actually here on this track, because every time these hats hit, sometimes there's another element that plays, and that's that kind of amplification I'm talking about. So, from that point on, then you do like pitched percussion if you want that. It depends on the kind of the complexity of your track. Pitched percussion only works in certain types of music, so that's a choice that you have to make. But at this point, I would move on and start putting my arrangement together, or adding in other instruments. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions or comments, where to leave them. And I look forward to releasing the next tutorial, which I think I'm probably going to work on right now. So I'll see you guys around.